I didn't believe the old stories. Not really. Folks around here always had a way of stretching the truth, especially after a few jars of shine. They'd talk about giants in the holler, shadows taller than barns, slipping between trees, things that had been watching these ridges since before anyone could remember. I laughed when I heard those tales, same as everyone else. Laughed right up until the night my camera caught something I can't explain. It started simple, just a motion sensor camera tucked near my still sight. A precaution, nothing more. Lately, I'd noticed signs of trespassing branches broken where no deer would travel. Footprints too fresh to ignore. Thought it was kids, maybe even rivals trying to sniff out my operation. I wanted proof. Instead, I got something else entirely. The first time I played back the footage, I thought the liquor had fried my eyes. The creature stepped into frame at 2:47 a.m. A hulking shadow, 9 feet easy, moving like smoke despite the size. Each step was steady, unhurried, almost calculated. Then it turned its head, and even through the grainy lens, I swear those eyes looked straight through the screen into me. I froze in my kitchen that night, hand on the laptop, coffee growing cold beside me. Watching, rewinding, watching again. It wasn't a bear, wasn't a man either. The arms hung too low, the torso too wide, the movements too fluid, and the height, the kind of height that makes you feel like a child again, staring up at something you were never meant to see. That's when the phone rang. Nearly jumped out of my skin. Rodney, my cousin, his voice tight with something I'd never heard before. They found prints, he said, up on Black Mountain. Big ones, 18 inches, 5 toes, damp when they were found, like whatever made them had just passed through. My mouth went dry. Black Mountain was only 3 ridges away. Rodney came over within the hour. I showed him the footage. He didn't laugh. He didn't even speak at first. Just replayed it again and again. On the third watch, he leaned back, pale. "That's your still sight," he said. "We've got to check it. Make sure nothing's damaged." I didn't want to go. Not back there. But I also knew I had to. Curiosity is a curse in these woods. The more you know, the more you need to know. We agreed to wait for daylight. Guns ready, cameras packed. And until then, we sat in silence, the creature's frozen face glowing on my laptop screen. When morning came, we hiked in. The woods should have been alive with chatter squirrels, woodpeckers, maybe a deer bounding off at our approach. Instead, there was nothing. The silence lay heavy, pressing against our ears. Not natural, not right. The still was untouched, copper pot gleaming in the weak sun. But the ground told a different story. A footprint pressed deep into the soft earth, massive and clear. I crouched, heart racing, and snapped a photo. The weight behind it, it was like the ground itself had flinched beneath whatever made it. Rodney called me over. More tracks, stretching into the tree line, each stride impossibly long. Then we saw the oak, 15 feet up, bark stripped clean in long, deliberate gouges. And above that, a branch as thick as my arm snapped like kindling. No bear could reach that high. No man had the strength to tear through living wood like that. We backed away, shotguns raised, though we both knew they'd be useless if whatever made those marks came charging out. The forest seemed to lean closer with every step we took toward safety. By the time we made it back to the truck, I could feel my hands trembling. At night, I thought I might sleep. But at midnight, the motion light on my porch clicked on. I grabbed the shotgun, crept to the window, and there it was. At the edge of the yard, just inside the tree line, a dark figure, perfectly still, watching. I leveled the barrel, finger tight on the trigger. But I didn't shoot. I couldn't. It didn't move for 10 minutes, maybe more, until I blinked and it was gone. No sound, no retreating footsteps. Just gone. I sat in that kitchen till dawn with the shotgun across my lap, every nerve stretched thin. And when the morning light broke, I realized something that chilled me worse than the figure itself. It knew where I lived, the myth that breathes in your ear, a religion of fear standing in the tree line, the forest's cruel joke on mankind. I told Rodney what I'd seen, and for once he didn't argue. He just stared at me like a man who'd heard the same voice calling from the dark. "We can't ignore this," he said. "Not if it's coming close." So we met at the diner in town, corner booth, steam rising from weak coffee neither of us touched. I'd brought my laptop with the footage. Rodney brought a plan. His nephew worked with the Forestry Service, knew people who might discreetly connect us with someone who'd take this seriously. But when he said the word cryptozoologist, I nearly laughed in his face. Except I couldn't laugh anymore. Not after seeing it on my porch. 3 days later, I found myself parked at a truck stop with a stranger. Dr. Marcus Wade, professor from Tennessee, hair graying at the temples, voice calm like he was discussing weather patterns. Not the kind of man you'd picture chasing monsters through Appalachia. I showed him the footage. He didn't smile, didn't doubt. He just leaned forward, studying every frame with eyes that carried weight. "This," he whispered, "is extraordinary." He wanted to set up monitoring, cameras, audio recorders. A small team. Quiet work, no media, no hunters. I should have walked away, should have left the hills behind. But instead, I agreed, because part of me needed to know. When we came back, the forest seemed heavier than before, like it had been waiting. Dr. Wade and his 2 students, Janet and Kyle, moved with quiet purpose, planting equipment in the tree line, setting up motion sensors around my property. They spoke in low voices, as though raising them might wake something better left sleeping. That first night, I couldn't rest. I stayed in my house while they watched from a van in my driveway. The woods outside felt alive, not with sound, but with awareness. Every creak of the porch boards, every brush of wind through the gutters made me clench my fists tighter around the shotgun. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. "Earl," Dr. Wade's voice was steady, but there was something beneath it. "You need to come to the van." When I climbed inside, the monitors showed it heat, moving through the forest, massive, upright, bipedal, circling, studying, just beyond the edge of clarity. Janet whispered, "It knows we're here." And I swear in that moment it did. The thing's outline flickered on the thermal screen, a shape so large it made the trees seem smaller. But it never crossed the line, never came rushing forward. It just paced. A predator weighing distance, or something more intelligent, measuring us with patience. For 4 nights the pattern repeated. Between 2 and 4 in the morning it came, always circling, always close enough to feel, but far enough to remain a shadow. The recordings piled up low, rumbling sounds you felt more than heard. Vibrations crawling along the edges of hearing like a hum inside your bones. Janet swore the frequency was unnatural. I didn't need her science. My chest already knew it. On the fifth night, everything changed. One moment, the monitors were alive with trees and shadows. The next, they were black, all at once. Cameras dead, feeds gone, though every piece of equipment still hummed with power. Silence wrapped around the van, then footsteps, heavy, deliberate, circling us, gravel crunching like bones under boots. Each step closer until it stopped right at the rear doors. We held our breath. The night was so still I could hear my pulse in my ears. Then came the knock. 3 slow taps, measured, patient, intelligent. No beast knocks. Kyle nearly opened the door before Dr. Wade grabbed his wrist. The knock came again, louder, closer. Janet's voice cracked into a whisper. "It wants us to open it." The ground pulsed, like it missed a heartbeat. My palms went slick around the shotgun. I was certain if we opened that door, the world would end right there in a wash of teeth and shadow. But Dr. Wade, his eyes shone with something else. Curiosity, awe, maybe even reverence. "It's asking," he murmured. "Not demanding, asking." And before I could stop him, his hand moved toward the handle. The myth that breathes in your ear had come knocking. The latch clicked and the smell hit us first. Not rot. Not the sharpness of predator musk. It was something older, like wet stone after a storm, or moss that had grown undisturbed for centuries. A forest's breath pressed into the van. Through the thin crack of the door, I saw the feet. Massive, dark, rooted to the gravel like tree trunks that had learned to move. Dr. Wade widened the opening, slow as a confession, and then it stepped back as though granting us space. For the first time, I saw it clearly, not in grainy green night vision, not in a blur on a thermal screen. Flesh and shadow in the same moment. It stood tall enough to brush the branches above, shoulders broad as a doorway, its hair dark but threaded with light that caught in the glow of our equipment. The face was almost human, but not enough to comfort. Eyes deep, like windows into caverns where no torch had ever burned. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All I could think was that every story I'd ever laughed off was standing right there, framed by the thin silver of moonlight. It raised its hand palm out, deliberate. A gesture so simple, so strangely human, it made my chest ache. It wasn't greeting us. It wasn't threatening us. It was acknowledging us. 2 species caught in the same midnight, aware of each other at last. The van was silent. Even the students stopped breathing. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, it turned. No rush, no fear, just a slow stride back into the woods. Each step sank into the earth as though the ground welcomed it home. Within moments, the darkness swallowed it whole. The monitors flickered back on. Empty trees, static, a forest pretending nothing had happened. We sat frozen. Kyle whispered, "Did we just?" But he couldn't finish. None of us could. Dr. Wade finally spoke. We made contact, peaceful, intelligent contact. His voice cracked, betraying the weight of what he knew, and we must protect it. The next hours blurred. We stripped the equipment, packed it all away before dawn. No one spoke above a whisper. When the sun finally rose, it felt wrong to see the light touch the trees, as if it didn't belong to the same world we'd walked through hours before. Back at the house, Dr. Wade made us all swear again. No press, no hunters, no careless talk. The moment this becomes a headline, it dies, he said. Curiosity will kill it faster than bullets. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt exposed. My land no longer mine alone. Every shadow carried weight. Every sound tugged at me. That night, I sat on my porch with a jar of shine, trying to steady my hands. The forest loomed just beyond the light, alive with secrets. And then I heard it again, footsteps. Careful this time, measured. Not a stalker's pace, but something closer to ritual. It stopped at the edge of the yard, the same shape, the same stillness. I didn't raise the shotgun. I didn't run. I just sat there, breath fogging in the cool night, while the figure stood in silence. The distance between us felt ancient, like two faiths staring across a chasm neither dared cross. I lifted my glass, a quiet salute. The creature tilted its head. Then it turned, vanishing into the trees without a sound. The forest's cruel joke on mankind was that it never needed to hide. It was always there, waiting. Years slid by after that night, though I measured them differently. Not in birthdays or seasons, but in glimpses. The shape at the tree line, the faint weight of footsteps carrying across my yard when the moon was dark. I never told my daughter, never told my neighbors. To them, I was just an old moonshiner who'd finally slowed down, living quiet at the edge of the woods. But I knew better. I knew I wasn't alone. Sometimes, in the dead hours when the world forgets itself, I'd sit with my back to the porch post, shotgun resting at my side, though I no longer held it tight. I'd hear it moving just out of sight, not hunting, not threatening, just present. And that presence was enough to remind me that the forest was never mine to claim. The hills began whispering their own proof, dogs barking at night and refusing to step past the tree line. Hikers returning pale, swearing they'd felt watched, though nothing followed them. And once a farmer 2 ridges over claimed he found one of his steers missing, only for the carcass to appear a week later, draped across a cedar like some impossible offering. Folks blamed coyotes or wild dogs. I said nothing. Rodney never let it go. He'd bring it up over coffee, his eyes darting like he expected the thing to walk in any minute. We should have documented more, he'd say. We had the chance. But I knew what Dr. Wade had said was right. If word spread, hunters would come, and the hills would never know peace again. So I kept the secret, even as it gnawed at me. The myth that breathes in your ear doesn't vanish when you close your eyes. It lingers, reshaping every silence into a possibility. On my 90th birthday, the family threw a party. Kids laughing in the yard, my daughter grilling while I sat beneath the old oak. When dusk fell and the guests drifted home, I stayed out, rocking slow on the porch swing, listening to the forest. That's when I saw it again. Not young anymore, gray threaded through its dark coat, its movements slower, heavier, but still tall, still immense, still carrying the same unearthly calm. We looked at each other across the field, 2 old men who'd lived their lives in the same land, never touching, never speaking, but sharing a truth no one else would ever believe. I raised my hand to farewell. It raised its own, palm out, mirroring the gesture from decades ago. Then it turned, stepping back into the trees one last time. 2 weeks later, I passed in my sleep. My daughter inherited the land with one request, written in my will. Never sell it, never cut it, never forget that the forest has its own guardians. The legend of the giant in the holler will remain just that, To most, something whispered in bars, laughed off on porches, dismissed as drunken stories. But I knew. I'd seen the religion of fear standing in the tree line. I'd lived under its gaze. And in the end, it hadn't destroyed me. It had shared the hills with me. That's the cruelest joke the forest ever played on mankind. Not that it hides monsters, but that it hides truths we're too fragile to accept. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Some are meant to stand just out of reach, reminding us we're not the only ones who walk this earth. And so I kept it secret, because some things deserve to remain untold.